Right, guys, I apologise this video is late and you're probably bored if you're hearing about it, but Aston Villa have just battered Newcastle United 4-1, so we're going to be breaking it down. It is late because I've just come back from my trip to Amsterdam. If you didn't know off Twitter, because I posted it every day, I was in Amsterdam watching the Future Cup, so yes, it was for business reasons only. I did not go to the red light district. Business reasons only, remember. But I've come home to Newcastle getting battered at Villa Park, and I'm not surprised because Aston Villa are tremendous. But personally, I think rather than just using the lazy option and calling Newcastle United tired, let's talk about how brilliant Aston Villa were. And Newcastle fans, me included, won't like seeing this. Aston Villa were worthy winners, completely dominated the game from start to finish. And again, personally, I think it's just lazy when you say Newcastle were tired rather than how good Aston Villa were. Tactically, individually, Yuri Tillemans, my days, he has been sensational for Aston Villa this season. Now, tactically, Unai Emery got it spot on, and we're all going to be breaking it down because I've rewatched the game because I was quite drunk when I was watching it over in Amsterdam. But Aston Villa won every single individual battle. They set the tone from the start of the game on how they were going to play out this game. And Newcastle didn't have any answers. They won the first ball, the second ball, and even the third ball. And Newcastle just got torn to shreds. And I need to be honest, because we absolutely did. Newcastle and Aston Villa have a lot of similarities in the way they play. The left winger tucks inside in support of the striker. Their left back is the one who provides a width. No, either Ian Maatsen or Lucas Digne for Aston Villa, and either Lewis Hall or Tino Livramento for Newcastle United. And the right winger kind of hogs the touchline, but that's not how Aston Villa played. And Aston Villa haven't played that way in the past two games. They nullified the threat of PSG in those central areas, and they did the exact same against Newcastle United. Aston Villa's game plan was all about stopping Newcastle's midfield control, attacking space, and creating overloads on their left-hand side, so Newcastle United's right-hand side. And the centrepiece of it all wasn't the technical ability of Yuri Tillemans or Boubacar Kamara or Morgan Rogers or Jacob Ramsey or John McGinn. It was the intelligent movement of Ollie Watkins. He was simply outstanding in this game of football. So I want to start by highlighting these two graphics, these two average positionings, one from Brighton away when Aston Villa played them a few weeks ago, and this game against Newcastle United, and you can clearly see the difference. You look at those compact central areas, and this was a purpose from Aston Villa because they wanted to stop Newcastle's midfield, but also have a overload on themselves. They kind of created a box midfield, and instead of Newcastle having the extra man that they usually do when they have 3 against 2, it was Aston Villa's 4 that counteracted Newcastle's 3. It was simply sensational from Unai Emery, and you can clearly see the difference against Brighton because they play with a 2 midfield, so they didn't really need to create that box shape against a 3-man midfield because Brighton don't play that way. And you can see they were a lot more spread out. Morgan Rogers is on that right-hand side. I've highlighted him against Brighton, and as you can see, he's a lot wider, but this time he was a lot more compact, and was purpose from Aston Villa, and it was simply sensational from Unai Emery. So now we're going to be looking at a few clips before we break down the goals on exactly what I mean. This was the opening sequence. Now, we all know Newcastle United like to go to a man-to-man press. So what Aston Villa did brilliantly was move off the ball, made Newcastle United worry about going to their man-to-man press because they were leaving space in behind. This epitomizes it all. And Ollie Watkins did brilliant in running the channels. He didn't stay centrally. He ran the channels. So then that created central space for the likes of Morgan Rogers, Asensio, Jacob Ramsey, whoever you want to call, moving into those channels in the inside areas. Now, this epitomized exactly what Aston Villa were doing, looking to exploit those channels, moving the ball into space and having runners in behind. No defender likes to face their own goal and run towards their own goal. Aston Villa made Newcastle United just absolutely worried about what was running behind them. Now, as I'm going through these images, I want you to focus on Ollie Watkins' positioning because he wasn't coming short and short for the ball. He was moving away. He was moving away from the ball because that created space for Aston Villa to move. And as you can see, Ollie Watkins on the left-hand side here, now you've got runners off the ball. You've got Asensio exploiting those inside channels because just think about it. If Dan Burn or Fabian Schär's man marking Ollie Watkins, they've got a decision to make now. Do they go with him or do they sit back? Now, Newcastle United's manager wants him to go with him because they're in a man-to-man press. So simply what a man-to-man press means is you've got to follow your man everywhere he goes. You've got to make that decision. So it was kind of a risk but big reward from Aston Villa. They chose to have the risk of moving Ollie Watkins out of his position to create space for others. Now that allows him to have a lot of reward, and that's exactly what they got. Now, Ollie Watkins' positioning, exploiting those inside channels, especially on the left-hand side, created two things. Allowed them to create overloads on the left-hand side and really exploit Newcastle United down the right-hand side. But it also made the Newcastle centre-backs to make a decision. So, and the majority of the time, they made the wrong decisions. And the next two images epitomises exactly what I mean. This time is when Fabian Shaw goes tight on Ollie Watkins. This allows runners in behind, and as you can see, Jacob Ramsey running in behind there. He's exploiting the space in behind. Aston Villa nearly got in on this. Now, this image is pretty much identical positioning from Ollie Watkins. This time, Fabian Shaw's decided to stand away from him because he knows the last time he went close on Ollie Watkins, left space in behind. But this is Aston Villa's second goal. Because of Fabian Shaw standing off Ollie Watkins, it allows him to turn on the ball. Look at Ian Matson running off the ball. So Ollie Watkins' awareness of knowing whether Fabian Shaw's coming tight with him to hold the ball up or he's 5 yards behind him to receive the ball on the half turn just opens up the pitch for Aston Villa, and they exploit the space in behind Newcastle United consistently. Time and time again, they were getting through one goal. Now, Ollie Watkins played a part in every single goal for Aston Villa. So Ollie Watkins' positioning were causing so much problems for Newcastle United because they were meant to go to a man-to-man press, but they didn't want to because of the space that were leaving him behind. Because Aston Villa were brave off the ball by having runners off the ball, if they were exploiting the space in behind. And this is another image from the second half where Fabian Shaw is sick of going in tight on Ollie Watkins because it was leaving too much space in behind. So now Newcastle United have changed their game plan. Aston Villa were forced Newcastle United to change their game plan. So some Newcastle United players were going into a man-to-man press and some weren't. So their defensive shape was completely broken. And again, Aston Villa allowing time on the ball for Ollie Watkins to turn on the ball. And Aston Villa once again getting in behind. As you can see, they've got the overload here because Yuri Tillemans is now the one moving in behind. So you had different personnels exploiting space in behind. So Newcastle United just couldn't track the runners, and they were literally getting pulled all over the place from Aston Villa's movement. Because we were compact in the central areas, that meant Newcastle United would becoming compact, and then the space was in behind and in the channels. And that's exactly what we're seeing time and time again. And here's another image where John McGinn is looking to get in the space in behind. As you can see, Ollie Watkins is coming short, Morgan Rogers is coming short, and that makes Dan Burn have a decision to make. Does he go in short and allow space in behind for John McGinn to get in behind? Or does he keep his shape? The manager wants him to go in short because he wants him to have a man-to-man press and be aggressive. But that's leaving space in behind. So it was making Newcastle United defenders second question what they've got to do. And that was just causing confusion all around throughout the full 90 minutes. But if we break down the first goal, as you know, first opening minute of the game, Aston Villa set the tone with this. They won the battle in the middle of the park. They won the first ball, won the second ball, which set the tone for the game. And then they moved the ball early into the channels. And then it went into the channel. Ollie Watkins closed Tonali. Tonali had to clear it. He cleared the ball. Aston Villa won the ball again. And then Yuri Tillemans picks up the ball in this position. And I often say that movement dictates where the pass is going. Look at Asensio's movement here. Using that channel, but Tillemans having the awareness and the way to pass to find him. It eventually goes to Ollie Watkins, but that pass was initiated for Asensio, but Ollie Watkins picks up the ball and then he has a strike and it takes a wicked deflection, but they've earned the right to have that strike. They've earned the right to earn that look for a deflection. Aston Villa go 1-0 up, thoroughly deserved, even in the opening minute, because that set the tone for exactly what Aston Villa were going to do throughout the 90 minutes. Compacted midfield and then have runners just like arrows just going into different compartments of Newcastle United's back four. Newcastle United just couldn't cope with the movement of Aston Villa. Two things killing football: pace and movement. Aston Villa didn't have to have the pace. They just had the tactical intelligence in the movement to move off the ball, which caused Newcastle United so many problems. Now, this was the opening sequence of Aston Villa's goal, and I thought it was brilliant. And this epitomised exactly what Unai Emery were wanted from his team. Morgan Rogers coming inside, so that means because Newcastle were going to a man-to-man press, Trippier had to go and follow him. In Trippier's positioning, he should not be in this area. You had Bruno pressing this man. You had Joe Linton pressing Kamara, and that left Morgan Rogers free. And this is what I'm talking about. Creating overloads is the way you break through the lines. Morgan Rogers is free. Trippier had to go inside, so he had to go and try and win the ball in the middle of the pitch. And then Morgan Rogers moves the ball on Ollie Watkins, and they find themselves in this position. But because Trippier is out of position, this allows the freedom of the wing to Ian Maatsen. Ian Maatsen identifies the space, exploits the space, gets in on goal because he's creating an overload. So it's pretty much 2-on-1. You had Fabian Shaw against Ollie Watkins and Ian Maatsen. Jacob Murphy tried to come back and cover. He wasn't aware of the situation, of the danger around him, whereas Ian Maatsen was. This allows him to get on goal, and we all know from this position, Ian Maatsen carries the ball into the box and then fires it in the far corner. Brilliant, delicious finish from Ian Maatsen, but it all comes from this movement. Creating overloads in that central areas means Trippier is caught out of position, which creates a space down Aston Villa's left-hand side. Ian Maatsen had the freedom of the left-hand side because in this position, Fabian Shaw cannot do anything because as soon as he steps out Ollie Watkins, he plays that ball into Ian Maatsen. Either way, Fabian Shaw's going to get caught out, whether he runs with Ian Maatsen, Fabian Shaw's had to turn. So by the time he turns, Ian Maatsen's in on goal. If he goes close the ball down, Ollie Watkins plays it in Ian Maatsen. So Fabian Shaw can't really do anything because it's 2v1 overload. And Aston Villa were doing this time and time again against Newcastle United. And the failure to identify this from Newcastle United, this is why you need an Eddie Howe in the dugout. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason Newcastle United got beat, because we were second best, absolutely everything. Aston Villa were terrific on the day. But again, for the third goal, because Newcastle United had been caught out so many times following Ollie Watkins into these central areas and leaving space in behind, they didn't want to follow him. And this allowed Ollie Watkins to receive the ball on the half turn and then pick a pass. Once again, and if we move it back slightly, this picture epitomizes everything. Fabian Shaw doesn't know whether to go tight to Ollie Watkins, because if you look at Yuri Tillman's movement, he's ready to exploit that space. So if he goes tight on him, Onana plays it into Tielemans, but instead he did a nice little reverse pass in Ollie Watkins. Ollie Watkins gets himself into this position, and now he's got a free pass to Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey just stands up the right back. Kieran Trippier puts a ball into a dangerous area, and it's an own goal from Dan Burn. Brilliant from Aston Villa, creating overloads, making Newcastle United's defenders second question what to do, and that's exactly what Aston Villa were doing time and time again. And then for Aston Villa's fourth goal, Newcastle United were all over the place. Beautiful strike from Onana. I'm quite happy for him because he's had a difficult time this season at Aston Villa through injuries, but he's a very good player. And this just goes to show Aston Villa's squad depth. Just think, they're bringing on players like Onana. They've got Rashford on the bench. They've got Asensio. They've got Donnell Mallon. They've got Jacob Ramsey, John McGinn, Morgan Rogers, Ollie Watkins. That is simply outstanding. You've got to think, Pau Torres didn't even start this game. Tyrone Mings started from, and you didn't really see a difference. Pau Torres is tasked with the difficult responsibility of playing on from the back for Aston Villa. Tyrone Mings actually did a very good job for Aston Villa, and that just goes to show their squad depth. Newcastle United need to do something similar. Be brave in the transfer market. But I want to talk about Aston Villa off the ball, because two images from the first half and the second half, the start of the game and the end of the game, just epitomised the discipline. The work rate from Aston Villa was simply outstanding. As you can see, they're in setting the back five here, pretty much. Maybe you can call it a back six, but this is what they were doing, not allowing any space for Newcastle United. They weren't really going to a man-to-man press. They were marking space once Newcastle entered the second half, into that final third. They were going marking the space, and I just thought the discipline, the attitude, the application from Aston Villa was simply outstanding. Again, in the second half, going to that back five, not allowing any space for Newcastle United to break them down. Again, they're not really aggressive in a man-to-man press. It was more about, let's control the space. But when they were going forward, it was more about, let's create zones and let's exploit those zones. Simply sensational stuff from Aston Villa and Unai Emery. Brilliant, brilliant game. So Aston Villa really did set a game plan and executed it to perfection, creating overloads in central areas, which are then allowed them to create overloads in wider areas, exploiting space in behind, creating space to exploit from the movement. Ollie Watkins was simply outstanding from every single man. I could sit here and talk about them individually and say Yuri Tillmans did this well, but I just thought collectively in the understanding of each other's roles and the roles and responsibilities in the team, Ollie Watkins could have easily just played centrally and tried to back into players, but no, he played an intelligent game coming off the centre backs because that gave them a decision. If they came with him, it made space for oncoming runners like Asensio, like Jacob Ramsey, like Morgan Rogers to get in behind. If they stayed off him, it allowed Ollie Watkins to receive the ball to feet, half turn, and then play it out wide, and then they've got the overload. Simply outstanding stuff from Aston Villa. And Newcastle United didn't really have any answer. And I think we look tired because we got tactically outplayed, and that's the truth. That's the brute honesty of it. Our team cohesion wasn't there because we got moved around from pillar to post, and that really didn't allow us to have any defensive shape or any tactical understanding of what to do when we received the ball because our players were out of position, so I had no rhythm, and Aston Villa were just simply outstanding on the day. Now, you cannot say it's down to tiredness because Aston Villa have played just as much as us. They've got a semi-final to look forward to on the weekend as well, so good luck to them. I hope they win it. I don't like this bitterness between Newcastle United and Aston Villa on social media because we want the same thing, and that's the breakthrough into the top six. We should be encouraging each other because I'm sick of this big traditional top six talk, because Newcastle United and Aston Villa should both be in that conversation, even if you want to go further and say ahead of Man United and Tottenham, because they've actually stunk out the place in the Premier League. And with Newcastle going all the way in the Carabao Cup, winning the cup final, Aston Villa playing in Europe, and as well still competing for top 5, let's say, this season. Outstanding stuff. But I just thought, rather than I didn't want to spend this episode talking about how bad Newcastle were. I think Aston Villa deserve a lot of credit, and they deserve their respect because to a man, physically, tactically, and technically, they absolutely bullied us. And in truth, I want us both to finish in that top 5. So we've both got 5 cup finals left. Us two win our cup finals, we'll both get top 5, but the tough games. Anything can happen from now at the end of the season. So good luck to us both. I'm a Newcastle fan, as you know, but Aston Villa, I've made plenty of videos on you, and you know exactly why. So good luck. And yeah, you deserve that victory. But if you spotted anything differently to me in the tactical setup, let me know in the comments below. But hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And until the next time, up the Villa, away the lads.